La 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 la. Resume. Blah blah blah.
Oh,
And I did
says
test
recording.
it. Yeah. I tested it at work, and it worked. So all right, I'll put it back on too.
Right.
Okay, we are on the air. Hi. Okay,
All
so
right.
this is Lena Bencomo, and let's see, what am I? I am an assistive technology specialist at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. Yay, go Mountain Lions. Anyway, so I am working on my master's in instruction. What are we called? Information and learning technology. I actually work for IT right now, but I work with students with disabilities, and I help to get them access to their classes and to the campus via technology. So I kind of assess them and train them in whatever technology and loan them equipment if they need it, and just help them get access to be able to read and write and see and hear and do alternate methods of access for them when they can't use certain senses or mobility or coordination or whatever limitations they have. So that's my job. And we are doing a meeting on StoryCorps, but I will let Leslie introduce herself first. So Leslie?
That was awesome. It was great to learn some of that cool information about you. And I'm excited to hear about the assistive technology. I'm Leslie Fitzgerald, and I am the teacher librarian at the Pueblo School for Arts and Sciences in Pueblo. We're located just south of the fairgrounds, if you've been to the Colorado State Fair, right in our neighborhood. And I have a lot of students who may need some of that support that you were talking about in college. It's nice to know it's available. I might contact outside of this to learn some more about that. I am in the school library MA program. This is my last semester, and I have to do 80 hours of field work in outside libraries along with my regular full-time job in my library. So I'm trying to coordinate that. It's a little crazy this year, but I think it's going to turn out okay.
Well, I work in a library. My office is in the library at UCCS, so you have to come visit.
All right, go librarians.
I know, and I know all the librarians since they're in my area. So yeah, definitely make a trip up to the Springs. It's only half an hour. Ooh,
Exactly.
you're rocking.
That's
It looks
good.
like your whole room is moving.
Oh, whoops, sorry, I'll
That's
hold
okay.
still.
It's kind of cool. Okay, so, and I guess we should talk to each other like this is not a video in case we decide to just make it a podcast, but I don't know, maybe we should do the video portion. So both of us are not, well, I don't know about you, but I've never heard StoryCorps stories before that I know of. Now, I used to listen to Morning Edition on NPR stations. I don't know, over the years, a lot, but recently I don't really listen to the radio. I just don't commute much, and that's usually when I used to listen.
Right.
So I don't know StoryCorps hardly at all until we got this assignment, and now I'm psyched about it. Now, you're not familiar either?
No, I'm like you, commuting. When we lived in Denver, that was when I listened more to the radio.
Oh, you
But
lived in Denver. Okay.
yes, we did. But yeah, short commute in Pueblo, and not a lot of radio time. I thought it was fascinating. I was so excited that you suggested it because I hadn't looked at many of the options, and it just really drew me in right away.
Yeah, me too. And it wasn't my idea. It actually was Holly Abel's idea. But anyways, she couldn't join. We couldn't work with her at the beginning of this week. So I decided, well, okay, I'll keep going with this because it's really a nice website. I've been on their site for a while. And here, let me share that screen so that we can look at it. Here's StoryCorps, and let's see. This is just one story I was looking at.
Oh,
Can you
cool.
see this?
I can, yes.
Yeah. So, and it's a really nice site. It shows all about what They do, and it looks like what it is it started in 2003. I was reading a little about the history, and they just started taking people's stories in little mobile units, recording units. And I think the first one was in New York City, but it's kind of nice because since then, they've recorded, I think, more audio stories than anybody else in the United States. And they're saying it's quite a nice legacy of stories for people. So in the long run, I think it's going to be very interesting because the culture will come across from our era to whoever listens to it later. And the
Right.
culture of our country and even the different regions, I think, will be very apparent just by these little excerpts from people's lives, these audio excerpts. So I have been totally sold now on storytelling just in the few weeks we've been in this course. I mean, I thought it was kind of cool originally before I came in, but I didn't think it was that important. And now I'm thinking telling people stories is what life's all about, I guess. You're either living it or telling somebody else about your life. And those are, it's just so important to have other people's perspectives on things. So I've enjoyed it. So we decided to pick our favorites or some of our favorites. I know everything I looked at, I really liked. So,
I know it was hard to decide.
yeah, it was, wasn't it? So you want to start by talking about one of the stories you picked?
Sure. I picked three of them that I kind of connected with on a personal level. There was something that I saw in them that I recognized or that I had experience with. And so I guess the first one that I'll talk about, it was called, the little tagline or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, was, I want them to remember the warm feeling that they're safe, but I hope they don't remember us.
Wow.
And this was the story. It was great. It was a story of a couple, two gay guys who decided that they wanted to get into the foster care world. And so they began to foster, and they had a little boy for a little over almost 3 years, I guess it was. And then they talked about getting the call that he was going back to his family. He was going to be reunified.
Oh,
And my husband and I have a 2-year-old through adoption.
yeah.
And
How
as I was
nice.
listening to the story, they talked about two different things. They talked about the call that, this baby was going to come to their house, which, I experienced that. And then they talked about the call that this child that had been with them was going to leave.
Yeah.
And there was a day with our son that I had missed the phone, and I went back and there was a message, and it was from the social worker. And she said, I'm calling about, she used our son's birth mother's name. I'm calling about Marta's baby. Please call me back.
Oh my
And
God.
at that moment, I knew, with every fiber of my being, I knew that I was getting ready to tell my husband, we've got to pack up, they're coming to get him.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
so he was sitting holding our son, and I called the number back, and it turned out it wasn't that at all. It was, it was something else, but the way she had put it. And just listening to this story, I really connected with thinking back to Transmedia Storytelling, the complete guide, when
Uh-huh.
they had the Mad Men video.
Yeah.
The John Hamm, I don't know what his name is on the show, but
Yeah.
he said it takes us to a place we ache to go again. He was talking about that nostalgia.
Uh-huh.
And while I didn't want to go back to that
No.
spot, I wasn't aching to go back there, it sucked me right back there. It was that storytelling element, that piece, because it was a shared history. And I think anybody who was watching it would have thought, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what that would feel like, but there was that piece of it that I really experienced. So it was,
So you
I
could
just,
imagine.
yes,
So that was what was the power of that story for you, was that it was so similar to something you'd already been through.
absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. No wonder that was powerful. I mean, it sounds like it was a powerful story anyway. And
It
isn't
was.
it amazing how they're able to draw out all that emotion out of you in what, 2 minutes or however
Yes,
long it is?
so short. I would not have expected it to be that powerful in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I know these stories are great. I mean, they seem like professionals, but obviously they're just real people telling about their
Right.
real lives. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, let me talk about one of the ones I saw. Let's see. Um, I think I'll start with this one. And this was about a father and his son. And the line on there was, the hardest thing I do every day is decide to go outside or not. And the father has Tourette's syndrome. And there's actually a little introduction at the beginning, a narrator that comes on and says, this is about this man, and he has Tourette's syndrome, and he's talking to his son, who's about 10 or 12, about Tourette's. And he's got this great attitude, and he seems very happy. So does his son. They seem like a couple of happy guys, dad and son are hanging out together. And he's like, yeah, you've seen me have Tourette's. How does it look like? And the boy is answering questions like, oh, you've hit your head so hard that you almost make yourself pass out, and you make weird faces and strange noises and blah, blah, blah. And so you're feeling for him immediately, but you feel bad as the listener, but at the same time they're so happy, and they're just talking like it's, what color shirt do I wear all the time or something.
Right.
And so you're very nonchalant, and you get taken in by their happy mood, and you've kind of, to me, halfway through, I've like accepted the fact that this guy has Tourette's and he can handle it, and he's a dad, and he's got a great kid that's really supportive. So it's really sweet. And then they hit you with something else, because then the dad is like, yeah, we were always really worried because it's genetic, and we were worried that you could get it. And you're like, oh yeah, that would be a worry. And then all of a sudden the kid's like, well, since I do have it, and you realize, oh my God, the poor boy. And then you get all crushed all over again, because it's like you're talking about his experiences, and his is not quite as bad, but they expect that it'll get worse as he ages. And it's like, oh, this poor thing. But at the same time, the dad ends up saying something good in that, now you know how it is, and you know how it's going to be. So, and plus that you've got somebody to talk to about it, because I know how it is. And so we've got each other to support each other through it. And it's kind of a happy recording, but it's just amazing the fact that survival instinct and the ability for human beings to be happy regardless. And again,
Yes.
It was like 2.5 minutes, and it took me through the ringer of highs and lows and highs again. Or it started out low because I thought it was sad, and then I got happy because I was okay with it. And then the son has it too, then I went down, and it was this roller coaster of emotions. And I think that's what was so impressive about it. That I was going through so much with them, but they did lift me back up at the end, so I was happy about that. So that was my first story. So
That's awesome.
I know, they're all awesome. So we'd have to listen to each other's at some point. I never had a chance to listen to yours.
No, I saw that one, and I wanted to listen to it. I didn't get a chance. I'm definitely going to go listen to it now. Thanks for sharing.
So what was your next one?
Let's see. The next one I will talk about was also all of mine had like a personal piece. I didn't necessarily know they were going to, when I clicked on them, but they did. My next one was from, it was called, I called my mom and told her there's been a shooting and Alex was in the theater. And this was from the Aurora Theater in the Batman shooting, if you want. I don't know what they call it exactly in the media.
Yeah, just the Aurora Theater
Aurora shooting,
or whatever.
And the son that the man was speaking of it was his 27th birthday, and he traditionally always went to the movie theater for his birthday. And so he was there with a group of people, and people who were there told the family afterward I'm rocking again, sorry.
It's okay. It's
Told
okay. I'm
the
used to it
family
now. Go ahead and walk away.
walk away. They told the family that Alex was the son's name. Um, During the previews to the Batman movie, a video or a trailer for the upcoming Superman movie came on, and Alex jumped up and started cheering, and that the theater like erupted in laughter. And the dad shared how special it was for them to know that their son was one of the reasons these people laughed the last time in their lives, before they were gone. So that was very powerful. He talked about calling his mother, and he said, I told her from the hospital the day that he was born, and 27 years later to the day, I called her to tell her that he was murdered, which was just a powerful, powerful line. And then he talked about going back to the theater that they go every year in memory, and they sit in the seat. He said the seat, and I can't remember, it was row 12, seat something, and they sit in that seat, and they said that's where he was, and that's where we will always be. And that was kind of that connection again to that Mad Men quote of the place we ache to go again. Again, not a place you really want to be, but yet there's an ache to go and to be there where the son was. And that one I really connected with, because just 100 miles down the road, my husband and I were in a Cinemark theater watching the Batman movie in the midnight showing, so when we came out, it was all over our phones and everything, and that it had just happened. And so that I had that personal connection, but also just this, even though there were lows, there was the high that you were talking about of the idea that their son gave this laughter to people, the last minutes of their lives, something that they could hold on to and something that those other families could hold. And like you said, it was just kind of a roller coaster, similar to what you were describing with the piece you talked about, that the idea of him being born and the happiness and the excitement that they had, and then of course the pain and that idea that life just is always evolving in both the positive and the negative. But those seminal moments are big to talk about.
Every one of these stories seems to have moments, incredible moments, and I have to say I have a connection to that as well, because and I don't want to give too many details because it's confidential, but I did work with someone who was present in there and became disabled.
Oh, wow.
Because of that shooting. And she did have a positive attitude and stuff, and she was working through becoming a new person, a person who could not walk anymore and had some other barriers put in her way because she was shot. But yeah, that was so close to home, wasn't it? Yeah, I was in Denver at the time, and that was quite an ordeal, and it's affected everyone that I knew in some way, and it affected my whole office because we were working with this young woman, and I'm sure it affected anyone who had anything to do with it. Even being, I worked on Auraria campus, and just, the fact that the shooter had gone to school there on that campus was very upsetting. And I think the whole campus had a different vibe to it at the time of that shooting for a long time. And I think something like that, and of course the family, as in that story you read. It's funny that Mad Men piece really seems to have struck a chord with you.
Yeah, it resonated through, because I actually hadn't watched it yet. I'm a little behind. Hi, Brad.
I've never watched. It's not. It does not appeal to me because it's the 60s, and it seems like the 60s were, especially the way they seem to portray it, seemed to be very sexist, and the men are all in power and the women are just practically in servitude. And I don't know because I haven't watched the show and everybody raves about it, but it just looks that way from the commercials. And I'm like, I don't want to see everybody like drooling over these goofy men in their 1965 outfits. And, I just, sorry, I'm going off subject here. But yeah, so but yeah, you're right. That does resonate with that particular excerpt that we watched. I think what was powerful about that story, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me the idea, or bringing up the fact that the kid got up and cheered and everybody in the theater laughed, and that being like one of the last experiences for some of those people that didn't make it.
Yes.
I think that really is quite a powerful thing. And I do remember being with someone who was in a wheelchair, who was a relative of mine, and visiting her and a little niece who was a little kid. And I picked up the niece and put it in this woman's wheelchair, and, with her consent, of course. And I took the wheelchair and rolled her around, and I was running and pushing her, like doing slalom racing, and we had fun, and she was laughing and laughing and laughing. And then she passed away like a week later. And I always felt so good about the fact that I was able to make her laugh so much. And so she had that memory or that experience before she died, even though maybe it was not a big deal to her, but it really made me feel better when she did pass on. So yeah.
Absolutely.
We're having a StoryCorps right here, aren't we?
We are.
It's amazing.
Too bad we're not recording this. Oh, wait, we are.
We'll have to send it in, or however you do it. I haven't even checked into that. I know they have mobile places, and they have some set up permanently. I heard in Chicago and San Francisco. We should get one here, huh?
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Colorado would be great. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so here's another one. Am I next? Yeah, I guess I'm
next. Yes, you're next.
Okay, so, I just wanted to mention one thing about this one. It was called oh, no, this is not the one. Let me do this other one first. Okay. The first line in there is, I remember pacing back and forth and back and forth. That's what they called it.
Okay.
And so what I liked about this one, and several that I saw, were the very first line just drags you in. I mean, you just hear one line and you're like, oh, I got to listen to this one. It's kind of like a really good book where the first line is incredible, It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Okay. So this one was, my first instinct was to just get on the truck and go. And I'm like, okay, what's this going to be about? And it actually, the story itself was not, there was no seminal moment, and it wasn't as powerful maybe as some of the others to me. I'm sure it is to some people, but it was this woman who had just seen, she was in New York at the time of the 9/11 tragedy. And she, I just went like this, by the way, it wasn't a quote, okay? So I know it was a real tragedy. So
you're good. Okay.
I know it looked like the wrong thing, but I was using my whole hands. So anyway, this first line, she apparently was right there, very close by, and witnessed right after the first on site, the first responders who were there on the scene, just digging through and trying to find people and their fellow firemen and policemen. Maybe they were second responders, because there were some other people there and they knew they were buried. And so she was just commenting on how serious they were, and how every one of them from different groups were just on there seriously working, like very consistently, and also as a team, regardless of where they came from, whether they were just volunteers off the street or firemen or policemen or whoever they were all just working together with no conflict and no nothing, just working and concentrating. And that was the whole story pretty much. But she and her just taking it in and witnessing this. But it was that first line. And I was just going to say, I think sometimes that's one of the key elements, or can be, of a good story, is having this great first line. And then the other thing that seemed so real to me was the fact that she had a killer New York City accent, and that was like, oh yeah, you are definitely a New Yorker, and you were right there, and this does seem quite authentic. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention that one little thing about that story. So what was your next story?
Let's see. My third one was called I Can't Make Up for Half of Your Life That I Missed.
Oh yeah, I saw that one on there.
Did you see that one? It was a father who went to prison when, well, it was the father and the son who were talking, but the father went to prison when the son was 5 years old and was released when the son was a senior in high school. So
Wow.
he missed, that entire experience
Yeah.
of school and growing up and everything. And they hadn't had this conversation, or at least that's how they portrayed it, of they what they thought of. And the first thing the father talked about was how when his son was born, he'd insisted to the doctors that he was going to be the first person to touch his son, and so he was the first person to hold him when he was born. And then he moved on a little bit, and he asked his son, how did me being in prison impact you? And the son said, well, I cried a lot. It affected every area of my life, which I think for the dad was,
Wonderful to hear. Yeah.
it was wonderful, and also painful knowing that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um, and the father said that during his time in prison, his biggest fear wasn't losing his life, it was losing his family. And the he the father was kind of getting really down and saying, I missed all of this. This was all bad. And the son said, we have the present moment. The past is gone, but we have the present, which I thought was a really neat thing for him to basically give that forgiveness. And then the father said, one thing you can never get back is time. And I thought that was really
Did you cry?
so truthful. I did.
I would. Yeah.
It was very powerful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah. So, God, yeah, what can you say? I'm sharing the screen, yeah, as you saw, but I do like that visual there.
Yes.
This hourglass and the sands going through it and losing the time. Wow. But, it's not going to be half his life. Hopefully here I
Right.
am making the rest of their story up. And I wonder if that's one of the things about these story cores. I mean, if you wanted to make a happy ending to these, or make you could write a book starting with that and saying, okay, I'm going to write a story about this. Of course, it would be fictional, and continue with the father and son relationship maybe for a long, long time, and maybe find out why he went to jail. And you could create all these other things off of this story.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, that would be kind of cool, fun. I don't know if they would be appreciating that, but you
Yeah,
could
probably not. You might have to change it even a little bit more, but
yeah, of course, yeah. Wouldn't want to do that. I don't know. Maybe you would, but okay. Let me see if I can get to the next one on my list. I think. Oh yeah, this one here was the Tourette story. The hardest thing to do every
that
day.
was great.
Yeah, that was the father and son. That was a really good one. So just one last one for me. Let me see. Oh yeah, I guess I was feeling like this was all too sad when I was watching some of these. So I did. Let's see. There's a search here, and you can search by keywords. And then there's also this collections thing where you can choose out
Oh,
of their
cool.
collections. And I chose love stories, I believe.
All right.
I mean, I don't even know if I did. I think I just typed in the word love because I thought, oh, it'd be cute to do some couple or something. And I read a few of these, and I don't see the one I've got here. So let me see if I type it in, I can find it. Let's see. We have solved a lot of cases going through trash. That's what it is actually called. Oh, I guess this is it. Okay. So let me just call that picture up. Yeah, that's the one. And so what I liked about this one, this is very sweet, and you expect a straight out love story, but it's not. It's actually kind of interesting. And the beautiful, sweet line from this love story is the guy is saying, I wish I could be in this relationship for another 200 years. If I could bargain with God, and it's like, if I could just bargain with God, like, I wonder if there's some way I could get that to happen. And it's really sweet, that he says that to her. I mean, and you can just see their happiness in this picture and their love for each other. But it starts, I mean, it's got such a weird line, but I guess apparently they were in bad shape financially, and he was an alcoholic, and he wasn't bringing any money in at all, and they were in desperate straits. And somehow, I don't know, they don't say where, but she starts the story by saying, yeah, you were an alcoholic, you were drinking all the time, we were not doing well, and we were desperate. And then the fun part is that he finishes her sentences for her, and vice versa. So that's really cute, because you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely a couple. They're finishing each other's sentence. And then he's like, and then you came up with the idea. And then she goes, to be detectives or private investigators. That's what it was. And then I did, and they finish each other's sentences. So it's very sweet to see that. But apparently they made very little money, and they spent all this time going through trash cans and taking pictures and being on surveillance. And they talk about driving long distances and then sitting for hours in surveillance. And because of this, just to make like $37 on this one job and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's like, but they're desperate. They got to do what they've got to do. And they're doing it together, and it's really hard to work together. And they talk about how it's really hard to be mad at someone and be on surveillance with them. So this forced togetherness made them talk out all their problems and work out all their issues. And I guess it also forced him not to drink, because she was right there.
Right.
So, and that's what got him to this point of being like madly in love, and him saying he wants to be with her for 200 years. And I just thought, what a cool love story. And it was forced togetherness that did it for them. And it was like, wow, well, maybe more of us should pay attention to that when you're mad at each other. If you can make yourself take a long drive together, I don't know. It's just, they had to talk to each other, and they had to work things out, and they had to get along to do this. So they ended up being quite a success story. And the other thing, after I read that line, I was like, oh, just a point of advice for guys looking for lines to give their wives or their girlfriends, or vice versa, whatever, your spouse, your lover, whatever. This is a great place to get good lines from.
That's a great idea.
StoryCorps, and you'll get all kinds of inspiration for things to write on the inside of your Valentine's card.
I like that.
Yeah, well, that came to mind for me, so I don't know. Anyways, I don't know if we've done enough storytelling technique discussion to fulfill our requirements for the week. What do you think?
I hope so. We've talked about a lot of stories.
Yeah, we did.
And definitely, I think you could see a lot of different styles, but kind of the same pull of emotion, whether they were happy, or positive, or had the sad piece. They had a little bit of everything. Even the happy one wasn't 100% happy. There was the alcoholism and the stress and the overcoming that you were just talking about. One of the lines in one of the pieces we read or watched, I can't remember which one it was, but it said, how can I make it good enough that you don't want to go away?
Oh yeah, I liked that one too.
And this, I think StoryCorps definitely, they have down the formula of
Yeah.
making it good enough that you don't want to go away.
Yeah, and I think the core of it is emotion, and I
Yes.
guess that's obvious, but it really isn't if you don't listen to those things and you don't realize, because I never thought about the fact that stories are all about emotion. Because I always thought on the surface, it looks like they're all about events. And it's like, what's happening here and what takes place, and then what happens next, and then what happened in the past, and the characters interacting. And it's like, no, it's all about emotions.
Yeah.
And it's the emotions of the characters as well as the emotions of the reader or listener who gets so drawn in because of the emotions. So, and like a lot of those stories, of course I can relate just being another human being, but I don't have a child, so, I don't have a personal thing with the father-son. I don't have Tourette's, and I wasn't there at 9/11. I wasn't in New York. So really, it's like, it doesn't matter because
Right.
the emotion is what I felt, and I could relate to the emotional,
Right.
um, the human emotion. So I think that's what I got out of this mostly. And those one-liners and those introductory, first sentences. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. So it just makes me think, if I'm going to do a recording, I'm going to start it out with some fabulous opening line. So
I imagine that there were some drafts of things, even the idea that they're coming together and having the conversation or whatever it is for the first time is there, but I still wonder how slick the production is on
oh
the
yeah,
other side.
oh yeah, it
Because
has to be.
to come up with that, to have these lines, there has to be something that they're providing, because most people don't just walk in and put
Start
together
talking, yeah.
great lines and stuff like that.
Well, I think the original recordings must be longer. They must be, it could be an hour. And
Sure.
then you just cut out a 2-minute piece where it was like so
And
dynamic.
edit.
Yeah. So, and that's what I'm going to do to this. So when you see the final
Perfect.
project, it's going to be snappy. We only hope. So, yeah, just check out my new snappy videos. Yeah, right. Okay. So, and of course, I'm probably not even going to use the video. I'm going to use the audio. So we should do something audio snappy. La la la. No, just kidding.
Well, you can sing. I don't think I can enhance that at all.
Oh, come on. We got to harmonize now. Okay. Well, so it was great meeting you and working with you on this project, Leslie.
Thank you so much for putting it together. I appreciate it. And let
Yeah.
me know if you need anything on the back end part with editing
Okay.
and stuff. And
Yeah. I think hopefully I'll have it.